Since the inception of cinema, comedy has been one of the longest standing and most successful genres. Even the Lumiere brothers, the two forefathers of cinema, tried their hand in the genre in their first public screening, a one-reel short called The Sprinkler. One of big screen's very first stars was a slapstick comedy actor by the name of Fatty Arbuckle, who had a string of very successful films in the early 1900s before he was involved in a very public scandal revolving around the sexual assault and murder of an aspiring actress by the name of Virginia Rappe. He then handed the reins over to a man with an unfortunate mustache. Yet, despite its long and proud history, I have noticed over the last several years a steep decline in the genre's box office success and its cultural relevance. In this video, I'll try to find out what caused this decline. Before I get into my reasons, I would like to quickly exclude some family movies from my consideration and focus more on films catered to an adult audience. Even some of the worst family movies have high box office returns, because parents just want their kids to shut up for 2 hours. In order to understand the genre's decline, we must examine its long-standing success. According to statistics gathered from thenumbers.com, each decade had a comedy that cracked the top 5 in box office sales in a given year until the streak was broken in the 2010s. In 1978, National Lampoon's Animal House racked in $141 million and came second in total box office sales, only to Grease. In the 1980s, we saw a peak in box office success for the genre, with every single year having at least one comedy film cracking the top 5. In 1980, Airplane came in at number 4.
And don't call me Shirley.
In 1984, this was the number 1 movie in total sales, coming in at $220 million. In 1987, the number 1 film was Beverly Hills Cop 2, making almost $100 million more than Dirty Dancing. The 90s saw the streak broken, but Liar Liar, The Waterboy, and Austin Powers 2 made the top 5 in the year of their release. In the 2000s, Meet the Parents, Bruce Almighty, and Wedding Crashers all cracked the top 5. Noticing a trend? With only a few exceptions, all these films starred a former SNL cast member, which brings us to our first reason. At the peak of cable television's popularity, everybody tuned in to Saturday Night Live. Along with some of the most iconic sketches,
you're gonna be doing a lot of doobie rolling when you're living in a van down by the river.
The show also produced some of the big screen's biggest stars. However, the show has seen a steep decline in popularity. The best example is of one of the most popular cast members from the 2000s, Andy Samberg. His first solo film, Hot Rod, was a box office flop that lost $11 million. Compared to familiar 90s star Mike Myers' big screen debut, Wayne's World, which ranked 6th in box office sales in 1992 and made $122 million in ticket sales alone, Wayne's World outsold Hot Rod on just the opening weekend. The consensus amongst the general population is that the show just isn't good anymore, and even more troubling, most people would have a hard time listing even 3 current cast members. Hollywood has a long tradition of taking the most popular comedian of its time and capitalizing on the peak of their popularity by giving them their own feature-length film. In 1988, following the release of Eddie Murphy's famous stand-up special Raw, the film Coming to America came in second in total box office sales, and for the duration of the 80s, Murphy dominated the box office. Compare this to the most popular stand-up comedian of today, Kevin Hart. At the peak of his popularity following his 2013 special, Let Me Explain, his 2014 film Ride Along came in at 53rd in total sales and made less than a film that came out nearly 30 years earlier. This took place during a shift towards films that cater more towards an international market. 87% of Ride Along's total box office revenue was domestic, compared to the number 1 film of the year, Transformers: Age of Extinction, which nearly 80% of its box office success came internationally. Even when you just use domestic sales, Ride Along doesn't even scratch the surface of the box office revenue of some of the larger franchises. Which brings us to... It is no coincidence that the fall of the blockbuster comedy coincides directly with the rise of the superhero action comedy genre that defines the MCU. Since the 2008 film Iron Man came out and kicked off the MCU, their use of humor in between action scenes has made the concept of investing in a slapstick comedy somewhat obsolete. And for those that are jonesing for film that caters towards their specific interests, or if you're just someone who wants to watch The Office for the 100th time, you can, with Netflix. This would indicate a move away from the summer blockbuster comedy that used to define Hollywood, and may indicate that the genre, when it pertains to box office success,
I'm listening to a fucking song!
may be breathing its dying breaths.